It's another edition of Time About the Movies. Today we're taking a look at the films of October 10th, 2003. We got 5 films to look at today, a lot of big movies to get to, so let's go ahead and just jump on into it. And I don't think there's any movie bigger than this film right here, the 4th film by Quentin Tarantino. That is, of course, Uma Thurman as the bride in Kill Bill, Volume 1.
On my wedding, they killed everyone I loved. I couldn't just turn the other cheek. But hey, I'm not that kind of girl. It's mercy, compassion, and forgiveness I lack.
That's my girl.
Governor choice.
Kill Bill.
You and I have unfinished business.
Rated R in theaters October 10th.
Kill Bill Volume 1 is, of course, the story of Uma Thurman playing a bride who swears revenge on a group of assassins. They're played by Lucy Liu, Michael Madsen, Daryl Hannah, and Vivica A. Fox, and their leader, Bill, played by David Carradine, after they try to kill her and her unborn child. Her journey takes her to Tokyo, where she battles the Yakuza, and eventually meets up with Vivica A. Fox in her home, and leads to a battle between the two of them. And as you can tell, the film is very much an homage to, pretty much everything Quentin Tarantino loves. I mean, grindhouse cinema, martial arts films, samurai cinema, blaxploitation, spaghetti western, stuff that he's promoted and talked about in various ways. Like, he's been, whenever they re-release these movies in the theaters, you usually see a Quentin Tarantino presentation, because he loves these type of films, and this movie literally feels like a homage and a tribute to those films. And this was actually supposed to be a single release, but they eventually cut it down into 2 films, which I think in the long run does hurt it. Not to say that both of the parts aren't bad, but needless to say, the best parts of this movie, and the ones that we remember the most, are in this first part right here. I mean, the scene where she's taken on the Yakuza is an awesome scene. That scene I was talking about earlier, with Vivica A. Fox finding in their home, and the kids coming home from school, and they're trying to pretend like, nothing's going on. Like, you see them talking like normal in the front, and then behind you see like swords and knives and all that stuff. Like, that stuff is great. Not to say that the second one doesn't have memorable moments as well, but with Volume 2, it kind of felt like a letdown compared to all the stuff they were building up in here. And I think a lot of people would agree that this first movie really does have a lot of the stuff that we remember most from this. The action sequences are great. The casting overall is very good. The visuals are amazing to look at. I mean, you could definitely tell Tarantino loves his homages to these classic movies that he used to grow up with. And it does lead to a lot of really great moments in here that just still stand up after over 20 years. It's a movie that still holds up very much over time. Like I said, it's not to say that the second film was bad, but if I had to choose between that film and this film, this one would win easily. But we'll have to wait another 6 months for Kill Bill Volume 2, because that'll be on April of this next year, that we'll get into once we're done with this year. So that's Kill Bill Volume 1. So how do you go from one of the most badass action movies of all time with one of the lamest kids movies ever? This is Good Boy.
For centuries, man has wondered if there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe.
Whoa,
What was that?
sound like a sonic boom.
Now they've come to begin our training. Testing. You hear me?
Sit. Speak.
This fall,
Take me to your leaders.
Leaders?
The dogs who walk you?
the secret of man's best friend
They look like people are in charge.
will be unleashed.
You don't see us picking up their poop.
Comedy.
I think that clip from the ASDF movie 9 pretty much sums up the comedy in this movie. Like, that's their idea of comedy, you don't see us picking up their poop with the fake wink eye. Like, that's pretty much what you're in for with this movie. You have a story where you have Owen Baker, played by Liam Aiken, who is a 12-year-old loner who has been working as a neighborhood dog walker so he can earn the privilege of getting a dog of his own. His hard work pays off when his parents let him adopt a scruffy mutt named Hubble. Both boy and dog get more than they bargained for when Owen wakes up one morning to discover he can understand every word Hubble says. Hubble's voiced by Matthew Broderick, including the ominous phrase, "Take me to your leaders." Owen learns that dogs came to Earth thousands of years ago to colonize and dominate the planet. Hubble has been sent by the powerful Greater Dane on a mission for the Dog Star series to make sure dogs have fulfilled their destiny Despite the best efforts of Owen's ragtag group of neighborhood dogs to convince him otherwise, Hubble soon discovers the awful truth about Earth dogs. You're all pets. Now, Owen and Hubble must work together to prepare the neighborhood dogs from a visit from the Greater Dane, or all dogs will be removed from the planet. And do you even give a shit at this point? I mean, the trailers pretty much tell you everything you need to know about what this movie is. It's a film that is trying to be something like Cats and Dogs, except Cats and Dogs is actually smart and funny, but it's a film that's trying to be like that type of a film and just fails miserably because this is written by hacks who are just trying to create their next big franchise. This was literally intended, like MGM and Jim Henson Productions. Jim Henson Productions was behind this too. I forgot to mention that, but when they announced this back in 2002, they wanted to express intentions for the film to serve as a franchise with similar expansions to series such as Beethoven, Air Bud, and Balto. One movie came from this. Beethoven, Air Bud, and Balto have had numerous movies. Pointless sequels, yes, but they still have made more movies than this garbage has done. I mean, that should pretty much tell you everything you need to know about how successful that transition was to try to turn this into the next big franchise. Didn't work very well for them, and how could it not work well when you waste such the talents as voice actors of Donald Faison, Brittany Murphy, Delta Burke, Carl Reiner, Cheech Marin, Vanessa frickin' Redgrave as the Greater Dane, an Academy Award-winning actress, one of the most recognizable actors in Hollywood, wasted as the villain and this kind of the antagonist of the film, really, because I mean, it seems like it's a film that sounds like the dog equivalent to something like The Day the Earth Stood Still, you know? Similar concept where they send a robot to Earth to check on to see if humanity is worth saving, except this time around, it's dogs, and not clever whatsoever. I think the jokes in that trailer pretty much sum up why this didn't work out well, and it doesn't help that the story is very generic. It's a very lackluster film. Nothing about it makes any sense whatsoever. It's a film that has some lazy effects. Like, I mean, this is Jim Henson's company. Like, you expect so much more from the Jim Henson Company than stuff like this. I mean, this is on the levels of Buddy. In fact, I would say Buddy has better special effects because at least Buddy, the effects were there. They weren't great, but at least they were there. But this just feels like a film that is just so the typical generic lackluster kids movie. It's not funny. It's not clever. It's a waste of genuine. It's so bad it's got me coughing like crazy, but it's a waste of genuinely good talent all around. I mean, Kevin Nealon and Molly Shannon can be funny here. They're also in here, too. I've seen Liam Aiken be pretty good in some movies. He's great in the series of Unfortunate Events, but not in here. I mean, it's a film that just it's just a mess on so many levels. It's a movie that doesn't work. They released it in October, even though we had pretty much proven at this point that most kids' films did not do very well in the month of October. Of course, times have changed now, but back then, that was always the rule. Like, most kids' films did not do well in the month of October. They dumped this there, and lo and behold, it didn't do that well to really warrant anything of a franchise, except for the fact that we put it out there, we put money into it, hoping that it will be the next Cats and Dogs, and not the case. Not the case whatsoever. So yeah, you can go ahead and skip Good Boy if you want to. I suggest you do so, but that's just my personal take on that one. So with that said, let's move on to our next movie, and that is George Clooney and Catherine Zeta-Jones in the Coen Brothers' Intolerable Cruelty.
My God, look at it. On October 10th, I would be honored, really, if you have dinner with me. I thought that went well. Comes a comedy.
I eat men like you for breakfast.
She's a challenge. About the things we do for love.
Howard and I are planning to marry.
And the things love. She can't really love this dope does to us. Now that the marriage is winding down. I'll be from Joel and Ethan Coen. Is that all? Intolerable Cruelty. You fasten.
So for the Coen Brothers, this is probably their most mainstream released up to that point. I mean, this was a movie from the people that gave us stuff like Raising Arizona, Barton Fink, Miller's Crossing, Fargo, The Big Lebowski, and those were films that weren't really seen as commercial movies in general. But this feels like a movie that was one of those movies that felt like a mainstream movie, that felt much different compared to the usual stuff. You have George Clooney and Catherine Zeta-Jones lighting up the screen in Intolerable Cruelty, a romantic comedy about men, women, and everything that could go wrong between them. Sparks fly when brilliant divorce attorney Miles Massey, played by Clooney, meets his match in this beautiful but ruthless Marilyn Rexroth. Weird name, I know. Played by Catherine Zeta-Jones. You also have Billy Bob Thornton, Cedric the Entertainer, Edward Herrmann, Richard Jenkins among the cast. And like I said, the Coen Brothers don't usually go mainstream very often. When they do, it can be a very mixed bag, and at least in this film's case, it is one of those ones where it doesn't quite work as well as it could. I mean, you've got two of the most charismatic and sexiest actors working in the business. I mean, George Clooney and Catherine Zeta-Jones, which Catherine Zeta-Jones in this movie, if you don't have an idea of what I'm talking about here, just take a look at this little compilation I put together from the trailer.
Is a right to a woman.
Look at her. An athlete at the peak of her powers. Excuse me. I saw your car.
Oh, Mr. Mousy, you have no idea. Howard and I are planning to marry.
Help him.
I'll pick up this one.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I always talk about how every once in a while there'll be something that comes up online about who looked the most sexiest without it being nude or anything. And I always say my top choice for that is Paula Patton in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol when she's in that green dress. Like I'm getting tingles just thinking about it. And a close second would be anytime Catherine Zeta-Jones wears anything in this movie, because my God, I don't know who did the costume designs for this, but you know what? 2 thumbs up on that one, because they make her look incredibly sexy in this. This is probably the sexiest she's ever looked on screen. Like, when she is on screen, you really cannot take your eyes off her. I mean, they did a great job of creating this insanely gorgeous-looking wardrobe that really looks good on her. And it's one of the things that does keep me coming back to this movie in general, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, really. As far as the story and script goes, it goes kind of where you expect it to go, and no real surprises. It does kind of take the safe way out of it. There really isn't a lot of that Coen Brothers style writing here too, because I don't think they wrote this movie. I think they only were the directors on it. I think it was written by 2 other guys, Robert Ramsey and Matthew Stone. If they wrote something in it, I really did not see it very much in it, but it did feel like they were going a little too mainstream for their own good with this particular film. But the film itself isn't bad by any means necessary. It's a competently made film. It definitely could have been a whole lot better if the script had been a little bit more refined and polished, and maybe you got more of the Coen Brothers adding into the script. Maybe they did. Maybe I need to watch this movie again. But, I mean, my big takeaway from it is that they did a pretty good job making Catherine Zeta-Jones look good. I mean, this is probably the hottest she's ever looked on screen. And that's saying a lot, because she has looked pretty good in other movies. But this takes the cake indeed. Plus, George Clooney will usually give 110%, even in a bad movie, that he's in. But he's fine in the movie. Both of them are fine in this. Their chemistry does, I'll give it credit, the chemistry does work well for them, but they just don't have a good script to really work off of it. So that's why I say that, yeah, it's passable. I would probably give it a mixed review. If you're a Coen Brothers fanatic, you want to see their works, it's worth it to just watch it on that front. But other than that, it's one you probably won't want to watch on repeat. I mean, like I said, you can watch the best stuff with Catherine Zeta-Jones in it anywhere. Like, you go online and find it, and you can pretty much find it there. But you really don't need to watch this movie to see all that. So that is Intolerable Cruelty. Let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, and that is Toy Boat. That is The House of the Dead.
Doesn't this bother any of you? The party's completely deserted.
Is that you, Matt?
On October 10th,
There must be some kind of scientific explanation.
It's not human.
They're everywhere!
the only way to make it back alive is to send them all back to the House of the Dead.
I've been waiting for you.
Rated R starts October 10th.
Essentially, America's introduction to the crazy, screwed-up world of Uwe Boll. Even though he had directed several movies before this was the movie that kind of woke everybody up and realized that he exists out there, and he had a major studio behind him to get this movie out. This is supposedly based on the video game franchise of The House of the Dead. It takes place on a fictional island infested by zombies, forcing survivors to fight their way off. Not a direct adaptation of the individual entries, Boll describes the film as a prequel to the 1996 game. House of the Dead was the first film by Boll to be released theatrically, in addition to his first video game adaptation. So yeah, he describes this as a prequel to the original game. Sure it is, Uwe. I mean, why would we not think that otherwise? Because this clearly does not look like another Evil Dead knockoff. No, it doesn't look like that at all. And I say that sarcastically. This does look like an Evil Dead knockoff at its worst. I mean, Cabin Fever had just come out a couple weeks ago. That looked more legitimate than this movie does. But he makes them cheaply, and it did make a profit. So that's why he continued to keep pursuing over other different video game adaptations. His next masterpiece of shit would be Alone in the Dark, and then follow it up with Postal. And there was a point where he was considered to be the worst director of all time until Jason Friedrich and Aaron Seltzer said, "Hold our beers." And with this movie, it's kind of hard not to see why. But truth be told, certainly not as bad as some of his other works. I mean, he gets kind of the ideas of the games down. There are zombies. There's a house. There's the dead. I mean, he's kind of on the right track there. But other than that, yeah, what more could you say about this movie? This is not a good film by any means necessary. But again, not the worst he's ever done. But he's going to get worse and worse as we go along here. So I really don't think I need to say too much more about this one. That's The House of the Dead. So let's go ahead and end the show on a much better note here. How about an Oscar winner here? Clint Eastwood's Mystic River.
I know in my soul I contributed to your death, but I don't know how. The truth will come to the surface.
No more lies, no more secrets.
Critics are calling Mystic River the best movie so far this year.
The very essence hit.
Remarkable, a powerful film. It is a masterpiece. Do you ever think about how just one little choice could change your whole life? Mystic River, a film by Clint Eastwood. Rated R. Select cities October 8th. Everywhere October 5th.
So in the summer of 1975, in a neighborhood in Boston, three kids, Dave Boyle and his two friends, Jimmy Markham and Sean Devine, are playing on the sidewalk when Dave gets abducted by two men and endures days of sexual abuse. Eventually, Dave escapes but is traumatized to adulthood. Jimmy is an ex-con and a father of three whose daughter Katie is found dead, and Dave becomes the #1 suspect. Sean is a homicide detective investigating Katie's murder and finds himself faced with past and present demons, and more is uncovered about Katie's murder. Learning Katie had a boyfriend, ballistics later connect a gun belonging to his father to the murder, sending her boyfriend as the suspect. Will Sean find out who killed Katie? Will Jimmy make it through the investigation? And will Dave ever admit what really happened when he was abducted? All those questions are answered in this movie. This is based off the Dennis Lehan book of the same name, and it features, saw there in the commercial there, Sean Penn, Tim Robbins, Kevin Bacon, Lawrence Fishburne, Marcia Gay Harden, and Laura Linney. And this actually was nominated. He's got nominated for several Oscars, and won an Oscar for Sean Penn, one of its first two. In one of those years where he was not the best performance in general. This is, like I said before, with Lost in Translation, that should have been Bill Murray's Oscar. And when he won again in 2008 for Milk, that should have been Mickey Rourke's Oscar for The Wrestler. But we'll delve into that one over time. But saying that, Sean Penn is not bad in the movie. In fact, he does give a legitimately good performance. And you have a lot of great things about this movie that just works on so many levels. It's a great story, a great engaging story, and you have a great screenwriter in Brian Helgeland penning the script here, and it's just a compelling mystery in general. Like, you wonder where all these elements are going to. You have these three guys who clearly have been through so much turmoil throughout their years. I mean, all the way from their childhoods to adulthoods, and you just get so invested in their situations and how they handle themselves. Like, it's really hard not to get invested in it. And the performances overall are great. There's nothing really bad I could say about the film. I mean, it's not a film that... This is the perfect example of an Oscar bait film done right. It's a movie that doesn't feel melodramatic. It doesn't feel too schmaltzy at times. It's a legitimately entertaining story, and one that keeps you invested in how it's going to transpire when it's all said and done. And it's a really good movie. And, there's a lot of what... Clint Eastwood kind of was on somewhat of a comeback after this. Maybe not a big comeback, because there was those years in between Unforgiven and this movie where he had more misses than hits. Stuff like Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, True Crime, Absolute Power, Blood Work. And starting with this, he was on a little bit of a rise again, because he followed this up with $1 Million Baby. He would then follow this up with what was the next one he did after this? Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. Both great movies in their own rights. Gran Torino. When was American Sniper? American Sniper was 2014, if I'm not mistaken. So kind of around that's... I won't say that. It's like between 2003 and 2010. Clint Eastwood had kind of a renaissance to him in terms of the films he directed. And this is the first time he ever was credited as the composer of the score, too. And you know what? Didn't do a bad job on it either. So there's a lot to really appreciate about this movie. It's a very good film. Great acting all around. A great story to tell. And Clint Eastwood doing what Clint Eastwood does so well. I mean, it's a fantastic film. I can't recommend it enough. Mystic River, a truly great film. And so with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. The next time we meet, we'll take a look at the films of October 17th. 4 movies in particular, including the Michael Bay-produced remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, John Grisham's Runaway Jury, Joel Schumacher's second film of 2003 with Cate Blanchett, Veronica Guerin, and Katie Holmes in Pieces of April. So we'll take a look at those 4 films on the next episode. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the place on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So, with that said, I'm off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.